"Excuse me, sir. Can you step off the plane with your pet?" The flight attendant's voice was polite but firm as she stood in the narrow aisle, her hands clasped in front of her navy blue uniform. The young man looked up from his seat, his brow furrowing. "What? Why? My cat's not bothering anyone. She's been in the carrier the whole time." The attendant shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the passengers around her. A few curious heads turned. "I understand, but we have a policy about certain animals on board. I'll need you to deplane." The man's expression darkened. He stood, his tall frame towering over the attendant. "Policy about what? What's wrong with my cat? You didn't say anything when I boarded. Now suddenly it's a problem?" Passengers murmured, the cabin filling with a low hum of whispers. In the back, a silver-haired man in a sharp navy suit adjusted his tie, his face showing mild curiosity as he watched the exchange. It was none other than Donald Trump, traveling incognito. The attendant's face flushed. "Sir, please keep your voice down. It's a safety regulation. We just need you to step off so we can sort this out." The man laughed bitterly. "Safety regulation? For a cat? Don't play me like that." He crossed his arms. "You sure this isn't about something else?" Her composure faltered. "Sir, please cooperate or I'll have to call security." Trump stood then, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Excuse me, but what's going on here? I've got a schedule, and I don't like delays." The attendant turned, her face pale. "Mr. Trump, I didn't realize you were on board. There's a small issue with a passenger." Trump waved a hand dismissively. "I can see that. But from where I'm standing, this guy's got a ticket, and that's his seat. What's the problem?" The young man spoke up, his voice tight with frustration. "She says my cat can't be here, but they let me on just fine." Trump frowned, his eyes narrowing at the attendant. "Is that true? You let him board, then decided to make a scene mid-flight. Sounds like bad management to me." The attendant stammered, It's just policy, sir. I was following protocol." Trump leaned forward, his voice lowering, but losing none of its intensity. "Listen, sweetheart, I know a thing or two about policies. You don't enforce them halfway through the game. Either you're fair from the start, or you don't enforce them at all." The passengers nodded in agreement, a few clapping softly. Emboldened, the young man added, "Exactly. And for the record, my cat's better behaved than half the people on this plane." Trump chuckled. "That's the spirit, kid." He turned back to the attendant. "Now let's settle this like adults. Apologize to the man, let him sit down, and move on. Or do you really want to escalate this and make the headlines tomorrow?" The attendant's face turned crimson. She nodded stiffly. "I apologize for the misunderstanding, sir. Please take your seat." The young man sat down, still holding the cat carrier protectively. "Thanks, and maybe next time, check your bias before you act." Trump patted the man on the shoulder as he walked past. "Good luck, kid. You stood your ground. I like that." Then, looking at the attendant, he added with a grin, "And maybe brush up on customer service. You're in the wrong business for drama." As Trump returned to his seat, the plane erupted in laughter and applause. The flight resumed peacefully, with one passenger quietly petting his cat, another stewing in embarrassment, and one high-profile traveler content to have made his mark yet again. The applause died down, but the tension still lingered in the cabin. The young man leaned back in his seat, exhaling sharply as he opened the small flap on the cat carrier. His tabby, a calm and sleepy creature, purred softly inside, seemingly oblivious to the drama. A middle-aged woman across the aisle leaned over. "Good for you, standing up for yourself. That was ridiculous." He gave a tired smile. "Thanks. I just didn't want to make a scene, but she left me no choice." From a few rows back, Donald Trump called out, "Hey, kid, what's your cat's name?" The young man glanced over his shoulder, surprised. Her name's Cinnamon." Trump nodded thoughtfully. "Cinnamon, huh? I like it. Sounds strong but sweet, like a good deal. A few chuckles rippled through the cabin. The young man laughed despite himself. Yeah, she's a good girl. Honestly, better behaved than I am sometimes. Smart cat, Trump said, his tone teasing. Knows how to keep quiet. Maybe she should teach the media a thing or two. This drew louder laughter, and even the flight attendant, now hovering awkwardly near the galley, managed a strained smile. As the plane began its taxi to the runway, Trump spoke up again, louder this time, as if addressing the entire plane. You know, folks, this is exactly what's wrong with the world today. People rush to enforce nonsense rules without thinking. That's not how you win. You win by being fair, by being smart, and by treating people with respect. Am I right? The passengers murmured their agreement. The young man gave a small nod, looking grateful. Cinnamon meowed softly, as if in approval. The elderly man sitting next to Trump chuckled. Never a dull moment with you, huh? Trump grinned. What can I say? I've got a nose for bad deals, and this one smelled rotten. Can't let it slide. As the plane lifted into the sky, things seemed to settle. The flight attendant returned to her duties, though she avoided eye contact with the young man and Trump. Passengers resumed their conversations, though every so often someone would glance back at Trump and chuckle, as if remembering the scene. Later, as the flight attendant came down the aisle with drinks, she hesitated by the young man's seat. Her voice was low and tentative. Sir, I wanted to say I'm sorry again. I didn't mean to cause you any trouble. The young man looked up, his expression softening. It's fine, just think about how you treat people next time, okay? She nodded quickly. Of course, thank you. Trump, who had been watching the exchange from a few rows back, raised his plastic cup of orange juice. Now that's what I like to see. A little accountability. Good for you. As the flight went on, the young man found himself approached by other passengers, offering words of support. One woman even asked to take a photo with Cinnamon, saying, "She's the real star of this flight." Toward the end of the flight, Trump stood up again, stretching his legs as he walked down the aisle. He stopped by the young man's seat and leaned in conspiratorially. You know, kid, you handled yourself well back there. If you ever need a recommendation or a loan, he added with a wink, let me know. The young man chuckled. I'll keep that in mind, Mr. Trump. Thanks for stepping in. Trump gave a firm nod. No problem, but next time, make sure you're in first class. That's where the real action is. The cabin filled with laughter again as Trump returned to his seat. By the time the plane landed, the story had become a legend among the passengers. As they disembarked, people were still whispering about the cat, the kid, and Donald Trump, and the young man couldn't help but smile. Even Cinnamon, tucked safely in her carrier, seemed to sense that she had been part of something special. She let out a quiet meow, and the young man whispered, That's right, girl. We're unstoppable. As the plane landed and passengers began to gather their belongings, the young man reached down to secure Cinnamon's carrier. He felt a tap on his shoulder and turned to see Trump standing there, adjusting his tie with a smirk. Hey, kid, Trump said. Just remember, life's like a flight. You're going to hit turbulence, but it's all about how you handle it. And you? You handled it like a pro. The young man smiled, appreciating the encouragement. Thanks. I didn't expect all this today, but I'm glad it turned out okay. Trump nodded, his voice lowering. Just keep standing your ground. People respect that. Oh, and give Cinnamon a pat for me. The young man chuckled. Will do. As Trump walked away toward the front exit, several passengers shook his hand, thanking him for speaking up. The young man followed shortly behind, receiving smiles and nods from others as they disembarked. Even the flight attendant managed a timid, apologetic smile as he passed. Stepping off the plane into the terminal, he felt a strange mix of exhaustion and triumph. A woman who had been sitting a few rows back stopped him. You know, she said. "This is the kind of story you tell people for years. You and your cat. Heroes of the day." He laughed lightly. "I don't know about heroes, but I'm just glad we got through it." She gave a warm smile and walked away, leaving him to look down at Cinnamon, who blinked up at him through the carrier. "Well, girl," he said softly, "we've had quite the adventure, huh?" Cinnamon meowed in agreement, and as they made their way toward baggage claim, the young man couldn't help but feel a little lighter. The world might be full of challenges, but today he'd learned something important. Sometimes all it takes is standing firm, and maybe a little help from unexpected allies, to make it through.